Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I hope that you are all good. In today's video we are going to be doing a Valentine's set of acrylic nails, and I'm going to be showing you guys how I encapsulate nail foils in acrylic, which is one of my favorite things to do. So for today's set we're going to be using Diamond Nail Supplies. So these are all from Diamond Nail Supplies. The packaging is just slightly different because they did rebrand. Our glitters are from Charlie's Nail Art. I wanted to have a bit of a rosy gold pink, but then I wanted some chunky glitters as well, so that's why I opted to use two different glitters. Starting off with, I have already done all of my prep, applied my tips and a thin clear acrylic base. So we're going to be starting off by using silk and doing a kind of like an ombre tip. So we're going to be using silk on the tips on all of the nails and blending that back the same way you would do a classic ombre nail. Now I have tried to leave one nail in real time, so all the steps for one nail and encapsulating the foils in real time. So bits of the video sped up and bits are in real time. Here you can see we're working in real time. So I've popped my bead of silk down roughly where the natural nail meets the tip, and then I'm blending that back into the natural nail so that we have a nice blended line. We don't want there to be a harsh line where the white ends and where your natural nail bed begins. Now the great thing about silk is it is a softer white rather than a bright white, so it blends effortlessly. It's a lot easier to do any kind of ombre nail art than using a bright white, but of course if you want to use a bright white here rather than a softer white you can. Now originally when I started out doing this set I was going to do all four nails exactly the same, so I was going to do all four nails with the encapsulated foils, so that's why I started off at this step doing everything exactly the same. But then I decided I wanted to include the glitter nails, so the pointer finger and the little finger are the glitter fade nails, so I do end up coming back in and applying another layer of white to them because I want the white on those two glitter fade nails to pop a little bit more and be a little bit more opaque. On the middle and the ring finger, these are the nails that we're going to be applying our foils to, so I don't necessarily need the white to be too opaque because we're going to be coming over the top with those foils anyway. I just wanted a nice soft white background, so that's why I start off on all four of these nails by just doing a really thin wash of this white shade. So as you can see, again, like we've done that first now, popping our bead of acrylic down, blending it back. It's always really important that you blend it back, and then I'm just pulling it down towards the tip of the nail and keeping everything nice and thin. I'm cleaning off my brush always between picking up each bead just to make sure that we're not contaminating our monomer with any acrylic powder. The cleaner you work, the easier it makes your application. If you start getting too much acrylic powder in your monomer, it is going to affect your bead pickup, so make sure you are always cleaning off your brush on a clean paper towel. But between doing each step, so when I finished my acrylic and I swapped to glitter, I think I popped down a clean paper towel because they do get dirty very quickly and they do end up with a lot of acrylic on your paper towel, which you are then rubbing your brush into the acrylic that you've wiped off, so you're not keeping your brush clean, which is something that's really, really important. Otherwise you end up with your brush clogged up with acrylic. Moving on, as you can see, I'm going to now come in and just add another layer of white to that pointer finger. So I'm starting off with a small to medium size bead, tapping it from side to side and then just painting it down the nail. If I'd had a bit of a better plan for the nails, I would have just built this up on that first bead of acrylic and made it a little bit thicker to begin with rather than doing two thin layers, but I just did it this way because I changed my mind about the design. But same as before, we want to make sure we're blending that bead of acrylic back so that there's not a harsh line, but where it is a nice soft white, there's not going to be too much of a harsh line anyway. Then once we have done this, I'm just making sure that there's no product touching the skin or sidewalls, and I'm also trying to make sure that I'm keeping the sidewalls of that nail tip nice and clean as well. I don't want to have too much acrylic running over the edges because then you're going to end up with more finish filing to do, and it's always better to try and keep your filing to a minimum. So I like to try and apply my acrylic as neat as possible. That doesn't always happen, but it's always good to practice. So now that we have got all of our white acrylic down, we're going to move on to applying our glitters. And here I'm taking a lot of the monomer out of my brush and I'm just picking up a really small bead of acrylic right on the tip of my brush. Then I'm going to dip right straight into my raw glitter, and I'm starting off with this rose gold hexagon mix. And as you can see, I'm placing that down in the center part of the natural nail bed area. And what I'm doing to begin with is just mixing that glitter and acrylic together. So keeping my brush full of the monomer that it did pick up, I'm nudging the glitter particles around into that clear acrylic so that it all becomes one. Then using the very tip of my brush, I'm very gently nudging this up to that cuticle area. I was going to say cuticle oil. We're nudging it up to the cuticle line. Try to get the application as neat as possible without touching any of that skin or cuticle. Ideally, you want an ever so slight gap between your glitter and the cuticle area so that when it does come to encapsulating, you are going to fully encapsulate that glitter in. You'll also notice that I haven't wiped my brush off too often, and this is because I want to keep it with a nice amount of monomer in it so that I'm able to move those glitter pieces around easily. Then I didn't want to stress too much about creating a glitter fade with that one bead of glitter. I just wanted to make sure that I was fully covering the natural nail bed area and we wasn't seeing any of that natural nail bed through the glitter because we don't have a coloured acrylic underneath our glitter. So then what I'm going to do is just pick up another teeny tiny bead of clear acrylic and a small amount of glitter, and we're just going to use this bead of glitter to create our fade. And as you can see, I'm just very subtly taking it down so it fades nicely over the white. Of course, you could bring it further down if you wanted to. Then I've picked up another small bead of glitter, and this time we're going to dip into that more chunky glitter mix. So this one, it does have some finer glitter particles in there, but it is predominantly these chunky glitter hearts and stars. And then because this was a more chunky glitter, that's why I wanted to put a finer glitter underneath, and I wanted that clash of the two colours. You could pop a similar shade glitter underneath, or even a pale pink acrylic if you didn't want to have the rose gold glitter underneath. But for this particular glitter, I was mainly using it for those chunky hearts. So what I'm doing here is with that first bead of glitter and acrylic, we did similar to what we did when we applied our first lot of the rose gold glitter. I just was kind of mixing the glitter particles in with the clear acrylic and then using my wet brush to nudge those hearts around to where I want them to go and then gently fading down. Now this does have a mix of iridescent hearts and pale pink hearts, so what I then did was popped some of those on my paper towel so that I can go in and just pick up specific ones that I want. So I wanted another iridescent one to the right hand side and then the pink on the left hand side. So I was able to just pick those two hearts up without adding any additional acrylic, because we don't want to end up with a too bulky nail. So by constantly going in and adding more acrylic, it can get a little bit thick and bulky. So if you know that you just want to come in and apply one or two more chunky hearts, you can pick those up and just apply them directly on top of that previous glitter and acrylic mix, because there should be enough tack left from the acrylic that hasn't fully set to stick them down and hold them in place. So once I was happy with how they're faded out, we're going to move on to the little finger and do exactly the same again. So starting off by mixing that rose gold acrylic in with my glitter, my rose gold glitter in with my acrylic. I'm really struggling doing voiceovers lately. I think it's because I've not been doing as many as I normally do. I was really hoping last week to be able to get some videos up, but the week just flew by and I was so busy with the kids and work that I didn't get as many videos up. And then the less videos you do, it's really hard to get back into the swing of doing a voiceover again. I do have a couple more videos already recorded, so I'm hoping to get the voiceovers done for those and those uploaded, as I have lots of Valentine's design in mind and I really hope I get around to doing them. As always though, if you do have any suggestions, do pop them in the comments below, but I just apologize if the voiceover side of the video seemed a little bit all over the place. So again, on this now, we've got our rose gold glitter down, faded out, and then we've come in and applied our chunky hearts on top, keeping everything as thin as possible. Now we're going to jump on to one of the fun things, which is encapsulating foils in acrylic. I really love this. I find it looks absolutely beautiful and you don't have to worry about any issues with your foils chipping because it's encapsulated in the acrylic. So all I'm doing is over the top of that silk acrylic that we applied at the start of the video is applying a thin coat of my Kiki London foil gel. If you struggle with foils or applying foils, I highly recommend the Kiki London foil gel. I just have never struggled with foils since using this foil gel. Everything transfers absolutely effortlessly. So I'm going to pop a thin coat of this over the entire white part of the nail, cure for 30 seconds, and then I've cut out a piece of this beautiful foil, and then we're just going to press this down into that cured foil gel. So I'm just lining it up, getting it so that I know that I'm going to see a nice amount of the roses. And then I'm just pressing this down very gently with my thumb and fingers, giving it a good rub to make sure it adheres, especially along those side walls. Now you do want to be quite gentle when you're doing this, because obviously we're working on top of a nail that's only really half built. We haven't built up any strength or structure yet, so it could be quite easy to break. So that's why you want to be nice and gentle and don't rub too hard or apply too much pressure to that tip of the nail. But as I said, the foils transfer effortlessly, as you can see. So we just gently peeled back the backing sheet, and you can see those beautiful roses and florals have transferred on really easily. This particular foil is from Charlie's Nail Art, but I wasn't 100% sure of the name of it, so I'll check the website to see if it's still available, and if it is, I'll leave it linked in the description box below. So we're going to repeat that step of applying our foil gel, curing for 30 seconds, and then laying down our piece of foil. I really like this one because it's got a nice amount of coverage with the florals and the leaves, and it's a really easy one to fade down because of those leaves. And yeah, it just covered nicely. Like I said, this is why I didn't want to apply the white too thick underneath, because you're not actually going to see too much of that white acrylic, but it was nice to have the base there to help the foil pop. Now I do want to seal these foils in before I come in with my next lot of acrylic, just to keep them protected so that the monomer is not going to rub any of the image away. So to do that, I'm going to come in with a layer of the Kiki London No Wipe top coat and apply this just over the foils, as we only need to seal those foils in. Once I have got that applied, I'm going to pop this in my LED lamp to cure. Now I want to do an ombre with my acrylic like I mentioned, so what I want to do is just remove the shine from that foil. So using the 180 side of my buffer, I'm just going to buff over that top coat that we just applied and cured. By buffing it over, you're not actually going to remove much of the product, so it is going to keep that foil sealed in, but it's going to remove the shine from that top coat, which is going to allow your acrylic to blend over it and adhere to the nail without any lifting or chipping issues. One of the most important steps here though is to make sure you remove all of that dust from buffing. So I'm giving the nails a good dust, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush, dip it into my monomer, take off most of the monomer, but then I'm just going to wipe over the nail just to make sure that there's no dust on the nail, but also to help that acrylic flow where I want it to go. Cleaned off my brush, and then I'm dipping into my monomer and I'm picking up a small bead of Diamond Nail Supplies Sassy. I really love this nude shade because it has a really pretty soft subtle shimmer to it. So I've placed it down in the middle of that nail bed area, and then using the tip of my brush I'm pressing it and tapping it up into that cuticle area, using the very tip of my brush to get it as close as possible without touching the skin. And then I'm also holding my finger downwards so that that acrylic doesn't run up and flood the cuticle area. Once I've got the center of the bead into place, I'm going to move on to pressing out the side walls and doing a very similar, using the tip of my brush to get it nice and close to the side walls, and then the belly of the brush to pat the bead of acrylic out and make sure it's fully covering that nail bed area. And then once I'm happy with that, we're going to gently blend the top of that bead of acrylic down. Now I didn't want to blend too much down, as I want to leave a lot of that product there covering the nail bed, because I want it to be fully opaque, so we're not going to see any of that natural nail bed showing through the acrylic. And then also because I want to start building up some of that apex area, because this is a core color, so that means it doesn't need to be encapsulated, so I'll just need to encapsulate my tip and blend area. So I'm just blending this down, and then I did come in with another small bead of acrylic just to perfect that blend. I wanted to keep the blend quite low down on the nail. On this set of nails I wanted the design to mainly have those florals pop in, so I didn't want to come in with too much of the sassy and cover up too many of the foils. Of course, this is personal preference. If you want to bring your fade further down the nail, you can, similar to when we were working on the pointer and the little finger. If you want to bring that glitter fade down a little bit more, you can. It's always nice to play around and create different designs and do your fades differently. So here I'm just coming in with that next bead of acrylic. I'm mainly just blending this down just to get a little bit of the shimmer coming through. Then we're going to move on and do exactly the same again on the ring finger. So I'm picking up a medium-sized bead of acrylic, placing it down in the center of the nail, and then just walking and pushing it up towards that cuticle area, making sure it adheres nicely, so you're applying a nice amount of pressure that it's going to stick down nicely on to that nail bed area and not give you any air pockets. And then just gently cleaning up around the cuticle and sidewall area to make sure it's nice and neat, and then gently blending it down. And if you need to to come in with a second bead, which I felt I did, I'm just going to do that here. You will also sometimes see as well, I press my bead, the back of the bead of acrylic down onto my paper towel. This is to take some of the monomer out of the bead of acrylic and out of the brush. This just makes it a little bit more drier, which is what I personally prefer, as I do prefer to work with a more medium to dry consistency bead. So as you can see with that, we've built up our apex area a little bit and we've created our fade. So that is all of the coloured acrylic, or the nude acrylic and the white acrylic anyway, applied. So we're ready to come in and encapsulate. So I'm going to show you guys encapsulating on 2 of the nails. And I am going to encapsulate them both slightly differently. So on this first nail, I'm going to encapsulate from the cuticle area downwards. So I wiped over my nail first of all with my monomer. This is to make sure that the nail has got a little bit of moisture from the monomer there to help that clear bead of acrylic flow around those chunky glitters. I find this essential when I'm working with chunky glitters, to make sure that there's no gaps or air bubbles. Then I have picked up this bead on the more wetter side so that it flows nicely around those chunky glitters. And then as you can see, I'm really pointing my finger downwards because we have picked up that bead of acrylic slightly wetter. If I was to work flat or to have my nail at a different angle, the acrylic would run backwards and we want it to run downwards. So gravity is going to do a lot of the work here, and all you've really got to do is use your acrylic brush to tap it up and around that cuticle area, and then just gently, really gently feather that acrylic bead down, because I want to leave most of it where I've applied that bead of acrylic. So I want to encapsulate in those glitters and I want to build up my apex, and then I just gently blended it down so that there wasn't a ridge or a bump before we come in with our next bead of acrylic. So this bead of acrylic, as you can see, I picked it up, I went to drain the back of the bead and it fell off my brush, so we're just going to get rid of that. Never try to work with a bad bead. So we're going to go in and pick up another bead of acrylic, just gently pressing out some of that excess monomer, and then I'm placing it down where that previous bead of acrylic ran out, blending it back so that there's not no shadowing, or kind of like where you'd notice there's a line of acrylic where one bead matches. Just blending it back will eliminate that. And then I'm just gonna walk this bead of acrylic down. So I'm starting off, I've got a bit too much monomer in my brush, so I did wipe off a few times, and I did pick up this bead wetter than I like to. So I'm kind of just waiting for it to polymerize a little bit, patting it from side to side, and then just bringing those side walls down, and then gently just nudging that acrylic down towards the very tip of the nail. Now if you remember, I come in with the second layer of white acrylic on the tip of this nail. So this nail tip is built up a little bit. So I don't need to encapsulate with a too thick layer, especially down at that tip part of the nail, because we don't want our tips to be too thick or bulky. Your tips of the nail should be the thinnest part of the nail. So I've left a lot of that acrylic up in the apex area and up in the back third of the nail, and then I've walked it down just so that there's still clear acrylic on the tip of the nail, so that it's all nice and smooth and the structure's built up, but we haven't got a too thick or bulky tip. I'm going to leave that to set, and then on the next nail I'm going to start off by encapsulating from the tip area down rather than the cuticle area, and that's because the cuticle area already has quite a lot of the apex and cuticle built up because we used that core color down there. So here I'm kind of just more encapsulating to make sure I'm encapsulating the blend between the foils and the acrylic, the nude acrylic, and just to make sure that that tip does have enough strength and structure there. So I come in with my first bead of acrylic, and that was on the more thin side, and I kind of just walked it down the nail, and then I'm coming in with my next bead of acrylic, and I did notice the apex felt a little bit smaller or a little bit thinner than I wanted it to be. So I start off by applying my bead of clear acrylic down in that apex area, but pulling a lot more of it down than what I would have done on the previous bead. Everyone works differently and everyone builds up their nails in their own way, so this is just how I did it, and sometimes even my own application differs from different sets that I do. Off camera I did then encapsulate the remaining 2 nails, allowed them to fully set, and then we're going to come in and file. Now I did only leave filing in on 1 nail. So as you can see, I've got the 100 grit file from Kiki London, and I'm starting off by coming in and just removing any excess bulky acrylic that come along over the sidewall, so along that tip. So I'm just gently running my file underneath there just to make sure that we're removing that excess acrylic. Then what I'm going to do is I start off on one sidewall and I'm coming up that sidewall, and then I go around the cuticle and apex area and then down the other sidewall. I don't tend to come over the apex area, to begin with, I just do that routine of up one sidewall, around the cuticle area and down the other sidewall. I'll do this 2 or 3 times, checking the nail from all angles to making sure that it's got a nice smooth even curve to it, if that makes sense. This is kind of just like debulking the sidewalls and debulking that cuticle area. And then I will come back in and fix up the underneath if it's needed. This isn't always needed. It's going to kind of depend on your acrylic application. And just those few routine steps with the file massively debulked this nail. I was quite happy with my acrylic application, so there wasn't a huge amount of filing to do. I wouldn't really say debulking is the right word, it's more refining, because I hadn't actually applied my acrylic too bulky to need the need to debulk. So it's more refining, and as you can see there, I was just showing you the difference already between that first nail and the second nail. Just a few swipes with your file makes a huge difference. Then here what I'm doing, I'm checking that nail from all angles, making sure I'm happy with everything's even and as symmetrical as I can get it. If I need to, this is where I'll come in and I'll focus my file more on a certain area. So if the left hand side is more bulky or uneven than the right hand side, rather than going and doing that routine of up one sidewall, around the cuticle area and down the other, I'll just focus my file on that area that needs a little bit more of attention. And then of course you're always shaping with your file as well. Then I do like to come over the entire nail with a buffer just to remove any of those deep scratches that are left behind from filing. I will try and do a little bit more of an in-depth tutorial on filing, but it's not something I'm massively comfortable or feel that is a massive strong point of mine. So that's why I don't tend to leave too much filing in, because I'm not 100% sure how I explain how I do it. It's just kind of like the routine that I've picked up. And then it's also sometimes a little bit tricky for me to film filing with how my desk is set up, so it's not always something I leave in videos, but I definitely will try. So I hear another important thing is really to make sure that after filing you remove any dust before you come in and apply your top coat. So whether you go away and wash your hands or give them a good scrub with a brush and some alcohol, which is exactly what I did today, you need to make sure that you're just removing all of that dust before you come in and apply your gel top coat. So again, I'm using that same Kiki London no wipe top coat that we used to seal our foils in. So I'm just going to come in and apply a thin layer of this to all of the nails and bring back all that beautiful high shine. And this is one of my favorite things about doing an acrylic set that includes either a little bit of shimmer or a little bit of glitter, is because once you've encapsulated and filed, you lose all of that sparkliness, and then you come in and you apply your top coat and everything comes back and you just get all that prettiness back to the set of nails. So I'm just coming in, applying this, making sure to avoid getting any on the skin or cuticles. As with any gel products, if you do hit your skin or cuticles, just make sure to wipe it off with some alcohol before popping them into cure. Once I have got that applied to all of the nails, I'm going to pop this in to cure for 60 seconds, and then the final step is to come in and apply the cuticle oil. So I went for the Fresh Rose one from Kiki London today. I'm just going to pop a dot of this on all of the nails and give it a really good rub in. Really massage it in around those cuticle areas. If you notice in the video, my cuticles are super dry, and it is because I'm terrible at keeping up with applying my cuticle oil. So when I do apply it, I like to give it a really good massage and rub in, and then just wipe off any excess from the nails before you take your nail pictures. And then this, guys, is the finished result. I didn't actually do my thumbnail for this set of nails, as I'm not leaving these on. They were just done for the purpose of the video, so I just focused on doing the 4 fingers. So keep your eyes out for my next video, as I do have another acrylic set planned, so I hope you all enjoy watching that. And lastly, if you did enjoy today's video, please do give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment below, let me know how you are all doing, and if you're not already subscribed to my channel, I would absolutely love it if you did, and then I shall see you all again in the next video. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Lots of love. Take care. Bye bye.